Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach and welcome to what is the first visual content of 2019. I thought it was probably about time that I had a look at my side and how it was shaping up, even though it's fairly early stages. I mean, the footy season is quickly coming upon us, but I feel as if there's not stacks we can really hone in on until we get some actual pre-season games and really up until the next few weeks, it's all a bit of guesswork. But I have got the new laptop now, therefore a few player profiles are starting to come through. There's a bit of a few weeks there in January where I just didn't have the laptop and things like that to get the content out there. So apologies for that, but I thought it was about time I took a look at my side. As I said, I'm only going to talk about the more keeper players and premium types, because rookies and things, well, I've got a few of the more popular ones and mature age types. The premiums are really all we can talk about because the rookies will sort themselves out. But I'll take a look at my side now. So there it is. You can take a look and I'll go through each line now. So obviously Rory Laird, he's super reliable, isn't he? I mean, we've got to pay big bucks, that's for sure. But he's the sort of guy that just delivers week in, week out. Super consistent. And I figure we may as well get him off the top because he is so consistent. He rarely has a week where he goes 60 and then he drops a bit. He's generally pretty consistent in his price, so I don't think we're going to get him too much under that sort of 530, 540 mark, so may as well snaffle him up. Whitfield, really like him. Defender status, we'll play midfield, I think. You know, Williams comes back into the side, Shield goes out of the side. I think it makes sense that Whitfield's time at halfback is done and he'll become that midfield type, and we know that he's been destined to play some really good footy there. So I think he's a really good selection. Witherden's an interesting one. Probably not super popular. He's sort of that mid-range popularity at the moment. He's certainly not a lock, but I think a few people are warming to him. I really like him. I think the back line has been a position where previously it's been tough to trust, but I think there's quite a few trusty types back there now. You know, no Doherty means Simpson's probably pretty trustworthy. Sicily's right up there too. There are quite a few types, but I really like him as sort of our next generation type. I think he's going to be a premium for years to come. The kick-in rule, I think, will help him a lot. Just running out of there, he takes about half of Brisbane Lions kick-ins, and I think he's the sort of player that can just really go your mid-90s just by being the go-to guy out of defence for Brisbane. And he's a beautiful kick. They love the ball in his hands, and that's crucial. Williams speaks for himself. He missed, all of last year bar a final. And I think I was a big fan of him prior to him doing his injury, which ruled him out for the season. So we get him at a really nice price. I think he's a no-brainer. At $400K, he's still young. He's a very damaging player by foot, and his run and carry, I think he's a lock, given he can get through a decent pre-season. And as I said, just a few rookies to round things out, you know, just a few of the guys that we recognise and expect to play footy, but we don't really know just yet. The midfield, I tossed and turned about going 5 or 6 premiums. I do like to bulk up in the midfield because I think the midfield is where the points are. There's always a stack of guns in there, and the top end guns, you know, guys averaging 105 plus, most are in the midfield. But I end up just going with the more classic and traditional 5 and then ruling it out with the rookies. So Oliver, love what he's doing. Just a contested ball, clearances, the quickest hands in the game, contested ball. We've seen, again, a great rise in his performance over the last couple of years, and I expect around that 115 mark. I think he's a pretty safe bet. Same to be said with Fife. I mean, he's an out-and-out star. I think he's priced pretty reasonably, to be honest. That sounds a bit silly at 620, but the guy's capable of potentially around that 120 mark, as we've seen. So how will Neil going out affect things? Well, it's tough to say, but he's an absolute star with his own right. Josh Kelly, love that pick. He's been long talked about as, you know, the next superstar of the competition, and we've really seen that of late. He's had some massive numbers, massive games, and I think he's just going to be a guy that, you know, produces the goods for us in fantasy world for years to come. Dustin Martin, interesting pick and far from an absolute lock. I just think he was a bit unders last year. He had some outstanding games, but didn't enjoy the consistency through the middle of the season. The bookends of his year were great. Polled big Brownlow votes at the start and the end, but he just had a struggle period. And you can look at the numbers, and I've done a player profile on him. I think if he can get back, and there's no reason why he can't in his prime, there's no reason he can't get back to those big numbers. And sometimes playing forward has helped him. Sometimes it hasn't. You can go missing. Sometimes you get a goal, but I feel you can go missing in the goal square at times. And maybe Tom Lynch, the addition of him, might see Martin just more so pure midfield, which might only help 3 or 4 points per game over the season, but that can be crucial. Zach Merritt's a guy that might be up for that sort of position, my 4th or 5th mid, and I think he's nicely priced too. Matt Crouch is a guy I've got there in the 5th midfield position. I love him. He just accumulates the ball. He tackles. He just racks it up. He's so consistent. Again, slight down in terms of the average. He's slightly unders given he had an injury. I think it was early in the second quarter at some stage in the season. Very, very minor, but it does save us a little bit of coin. And I just think Adelaide had a tough season. I expect him to bounce back to an extent. And I think he'll continue what was a really good year for him last year. As I said off the top, just rookies. Guns and rookies, more or less. It's tried and true. There's no reason to mess with it. The ruck department's really interesting. Grundy, is it Grundy? Is it Gawn? Can you have both? I discussed that in my ruck video a few weeks back. I've gone Grundy. I just think he's a little more durable. He's got a little less competition in terms of players stealing or sharing time with him in the ruck. It's a tough call. I don't expect him to stay anywhere near that price. I don't expect him to have a season like last season. But 110 plus, very likely. He can just get midfield numbers. That's how well he covers the ground and reads the play and gets involved. And maybe just, that durability gives him a slight edge on Gawn. And the Proust factor, how does that affect it? And the fact that Gawn, without Lever last year, Gawn was floating back and getting a bit more intercept work. How does his role slightly change? We know he's going to be an outstanding player too, Gawn, but there's just a couple of little things that maybe just go towards Grundy. And Goldstein, I really love the way he finished the season last year, back to some of his real best. There's no reason he can't continue to have really, really good numbers at 31. It's not that old in footy, particularly for a ruckman. I think the ruck types with their knowledge of the game and the nous of the ruck craft can continue to dominate even when their legs start to go a little bit and the pace isn't quite there. Look at Sandilands. He's no amazing mover, but he continues to get the job done in the ruck, and when he's out there, he scores. So I think Goldstein can do similar to that. And it is tough, that second ruck spot. It's really tough. Stephen Martin's in the conversation. Do you go down to a Mumford? I don't like that he's missing games already. Naismith, I was looking at Cruiser. There's a few names to flow around, but personally I enjoy to just have 2 ruckmen that I can really have a lot of faith in, and they're not going to provide too many headaches for me. So that was the thinking there. The forward line I probably found the most difficult. And I might even, you can see it there, and I might even just go in. Dangerfield, Heaney, I think they just pick themselves. Absolute locks. But then I was looking through. Hawkins, I don't think you pick. Westhoff, I don't think you pick. Franklin, I don't think you pick. Meningola, very consistent, solid type. But there's a lot of changing of the guard in that Geelong midfield. Devin Smith, pretty reasonable. He's only had that one good year, and I think he just did an injury too today potentially, which I haven't quite read up on. McDonald doesn't excite me. Gray concerns me with the injuries. Gunston, solid, but I don't know if you start with him. Mundy, I wouldn't be going near. Same with Bruce. Then you've got Dunkley. He's definitely a guy to consider. I'll have a player profile on him pretty soon that you can check out. And then, there's just a few more guys that I'm not sure you can absolutely bank on. Kelly, I have my, not concerns, but to put that much coin into a guy who wants to leave, he's only had one top season. McLean, Are we going to get the second half McLean or the first half of the season McLean? Rewald wouldn't touch Wallace. He's tempter at times, but and then it brings me to Wingard, who at the moment I have gone. But look, it's a tough one because there aren't a lot of guys that at least I look at and say, yeah, I'm confident with them. So it does make it very interesting. So personally, I think Dangerfield, Heaney, pick themselves. Then I've gone Wingard. I do like the ability for him to play through the midfield. I really like that. So I think, given Tom Mitchell's out of the side, he should get opportunity. And then I've just rounded it out with a few types. I will say, potentially a few things. Let's just get out of that little trade bit. So that's the team. What could potentially change, or what am I thinking about at the moment? I'm pretty comfortable with the back line. I really like that. Witherden is a moving part potentially, but I like that, he's under 500k. He's at a really nice price, and I'm a big fan of him. Martin could potentially make way for Merritt, maybe someone else, but I'm pretty confident with Dusty. How do I go about the rucks? Very tough to say. I'm sure Grundy will be there. I'm not sure who else will be. Goldstein's the man at the moment. And the forward line could see a little bit of change. I mean, I've got 40k there. I think if Dunkley comes out and continues to show what he showed in the back half of last year, which was an average of 104 in the last 10 games, I think it was, it'd be tough to say no. Wingard has let us down many, many times. He killed me last year. But just with new club, opportunity, show good signs when in the midfield last year, I think if he can play more midfield minutes, I think he's got a 90 plus, or high 90s, I should say, average in him. So Dunkley, Wingard, sort of fighting over that. It'll come down to pre-season form. And Darcy Moore, I think, is a guy that I just came across him and I thought, it's interesting. It's interesting just because I had Rankin there and 200k, he might end up looking amazing and you might stick with him. You might even end up, going Sam Walsh in the midfield and just going a normal rookie. But Darcy Moore just gave me a bit of a wonder, could he be intercepting defender, 250k or whatever he is, 240. Food for thought, but they're the sort of questions that you don't really need to be racking your brain with at the moment. It's nice to think about, but we haven't seen any pre-season games, and that is what is going to define a lot of these other things. Rookies will show themselves. If there's more rookies in certain positions, then we might alter our structure. But I think more or less that's a pretty stock standard. 4 and 3 premiums in the back line, the forward line. Some may have 4 in the forward line, 3 in the back line, depending who you back in. 5 in the midfield is pretty stock standard. And the ruck setups, there'll be a bit of differentiation across most teams in the ruck department. But I think I'm happy with 2 premiums at the minute. So let me know what you think about my side. And feel free to comment yours. I won't be doing any sort of rate my team things individually, but obviously, hopefully, some of my profiles, and as we get on the pre-season, a few more real individual looks at some of these lines and players will hopefully help you formulate your team. And hopefully you're feeling confident about it as the pre-season goes on. But again, thanks for tuning in, and everyone who has subscribed of late too. I've had a lot of subscribers jump on board over the last couple of weeks, even when I wasn't really getting too much fresh content out there. There's still been a few. So again, thank you for those who have jumped on board. And if you've been with me for the long haul over the last few seasons, of course, I always appreciate that. And I'm stoked that you're still around and enjoying the stuff. So I'll be back pretty soon, more profiles, and no doubt there'll be an update on how my team's looking over the next few weeks. So thanks again, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers.